Good evening. Thanks for joining us for our Cancer Education Series. Our Cancer Education Series is co-sponsored by Above and Beyond Cancer and Mercy One Cancer Center. And it comes to you all in part from a grant from the Iowa Cancer Consortium. And tonight we're going to be talking about mindfulness. And we've got a live studio audience guest here and a live studio audience tonight. And we're also streaming this live. And our guest is Allison Peet. Allison is an Iowan, grew up in Dubuque, and went to college at the University of Northern Iowa, where she majored in marketing and had a career in marketing. She'll tell you a little bit about herself, but through her own, search for finding tranquility, came across mindfulness. And we're going to learn a bit about mindfulness, about mindfulness-based stress reduction, and we're going to learn a little bit about physiology. And with that, I'll turn it over to Allison, who's going to talk about the autonomic stress reactivity cycle.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
being
you,
with
Dr.
us.
Deming. Thanks for having me. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. My name's Allison Peet, and I teach mindfulness. And so I'll be talking about what is mindfulness. We'll be practicing a little bit of mindfulness, and then also the automatic habitual stress reactivity cycle that we all tend to get in, and how do we disrupt the cycle. So one moment while I share my screen here. Hopefully everybody can see that and see us simultaneously. So again, the automatic stress reactivity cycle. I opened my own business back in 2015 devoted to teaching mindfulness. So I'm what's called a certified mindfulness-based stress reduction instructor. And I'm going to stop my share for a minute so people can see us, if that works. Can we go back? Can They just see us now? Okay, great. So mindfulness-based stress reduction is an 8-week course. It's backed by over 40 years of research, and it's proven to help reduce the symptoms of stress and anxiety. And it also doesn't just reduce stress, it also helps us live more deliberately, live more purposefully with more meaning in our life. And I am a certified MBSR instructor, which is the highest, most rigorous level of training in the country and in the world through University of Massachusetts Medical School and Brown University. So we're required to walk the talk, not just talk it, right? So it takes about 3 to 5 years to become certified. I teach 8-week courses, I teach 4-week courses, and also one-on-ones as well.
So Allison, I'm not sure if you're going to go into the history of MBSR, but it's really has such a strong evidence-based. John Kabat-Zinn, correct me if I'm wrong, started it, and it really grew out of research done in Massachusetts, and over years has developed such a body of evidence showing that not only is it effective, but it's effective in very many different things, including, reducing stress can help prevent cancer.
Exactly.
And it's amazing how our physiology has such an impact on so many different organ systems.
Absolutely. So it is an evidence-based program that literally, so can you tell me about neuroscience? What can you tell me about the branch of neuroplasticity and mindfulness? What do you know about that?
Yes. So I would start off by saying that we all intuitively know that what happens out here and we perceive through our mind can affect our body. So the way we know it is, let's say I walk outside to take the garbage out, and I am walking outside, and all of a sudden a dog jumps from behind a bush, doesn't touch me, but I am startled. I can sense my heart beating, my mouth goes dry. I can sense this huge physiology. So we all know that what happens, basically in our mind from our senses can change our physiology. The same thing can happen, but we don't perceive it quite as dramatically when you see, listen to some beautiful music, or you sit under a tree, and the way that the perception of the senses affects our physiology has a profound effect. We notice it most dramatically when it's kind of the fight or flight,
Right.
but there's a whole lot of goodness that happens. And as you start using the part of your brain that mellows you, that reduces your heart rate, slows your breathing, gives that sense of calm, the more you do it, just like if I wanted to build a bigger bicep, I could absolutely know how to do it. I would do curls for a month, and if you measured, my bicep would be bigger, absolutely guaranteed. If you practice parts of your brain just like you practice your biceps, you will grow that part of your brain.
Exactly.
And that's
Right, that's
neuroplasticity.
neuroplasticity. So literally through the practice of meditation, the way we use our minds can literally change the anatomical structures of our brains. And through meditation specifically, it grows the gray and white matter in the key areas that have to do with good decision making and empathy and compassion and stress reduction. And it shrinks the gray and white matter around the limbic system that is part of the amygdala, the alarm sounding. It actually shrinks the gray matter after even 8 weeks of practice, 8 weeks of mindfulness practice, daily and consistent practice. So, yes.
And that was proven with a study where they took some monks and they put them in the MRI scanner, and they did serial MRIs and prove you actually can grow part of your brain by practice.
Exactly. And it doesn't just have to be monks. Like, that's the cool thing. It can be me and you, right? It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go and meditate for hours and hours and hours a day. It can literally be, even 10 minutes has been studied to proven to help with the structures of our brains, right? To how we use our minds. So we're going to be talking about mindfulness meditation, strengthening, you just talked about it, the noticing brain. So when we use the noticing brain, which is part of our awareness, it helps with being aware of our thoughts, our emotions, our physical sensations. That noticing brain is directly connected to the amygdala. Now I'm forgetting what it's called, the working memory part of our brain. It's responsible for storytelling. It's responsible for problem solving and analyzing. This part of the brain is not directly connected to the amygdala. So we actually have to strengthen the noticing brain in order for us to calm ourselves down, right? We can't just think our way out of these problems. We have to use awareness. We have to use our mindfulness training, just like a bicep curl in the gym, right?
But when you get into using the working brain, that's kind of like when you get into that sense of flow, when you're totally immersed in that working brain as opposed to the noticing brain.
Exactly. Yep. And you were talking about research. I just came across from last year, it's pretty recent, some research studies that were proven within adults with cancer. So back in August of 2020, MBI stands for Mindfulness-Based Interventions that, including mindfulness-based stress reduction, were associated with reduction in anxiety and depression up to 6 months post-intervention as well in adults with cancer. So it works, and it continues to work, right? Also with another study with healthcare professionals, that it was these mindfulness-based interventions, not necessarily the 8-week course, but even they said there's 5 weekly sessions that were an hour and a half long, actually helped to reduce stress in healthcare professionals as well. So what exactly is mindfulness? What is mindfulness? And like you said, it's being in a state of flow. It's knowing what's on the mind without taking the bait. That's the most simple and serviceable definition, is knowing what's on the mind without taking the bait. We've learned to bring wise, compassionate attention to our thoughts, to our emotions, so that we can self-regulate in real time and be able to respond more wisely, more creatively to our challenges, to our pain, versus reacting out of emotional states blindly as well. So it's really an interesting thing that we can actually work more directly with our biology, with our nervous system, and create more sense of ease and flow in our life. How often do you think our minds wander in a day?
Oh, I think they wander once a minute, probably, maybe even more. I guess, if you're involved in a flow activity where you're really not wandering, but I would bet most of us 30 times an hour for 3,000 times.
Yeah, right. A lot. Yes, exactly. So it's about half of our waking hours. So Harvard did a mind wandering study a few years back and found that 47% of our waking hours, our minds are not on what we're actually doing. And they kind of found out it's kind of making us less happy, even if our mind wandering is on something pleasant like a vacation. Mm-hmm. What we've noticed is that it's that lack of control of not unable to bring ourselves back into the present moment. So yes, I want to make sure that people can see us too. So should I stop sharing?
Let's get there's a way that we can click this, and now which is the way where we can see both the screen and us?
Yeah, should be.
Which one of these buttons? Is it that button?
I believe so.
Okay, so now we'll go back to sharing, and that is done down here, or which of these?
Well, we don't really need to do it right now. Would you like to practice? Would you like to experience some mindfulness?
Where do we start? We're going to practice on mindfulness.
Yep, okay, I don't need to share it right now.
I'm going to come over here with the studio audience, and you're going to lead us in some mindfulness.
Okay, let's do that. So there's different ways of learning. So we've been learning up until now we've been learning with intellect, right? With our thinking, with conceptualizing, with idealizing about mindfulness. We can read all day long, right? We can read all day long about what mindfulness actually is. But I feel like that's just the tip of the iceberg. We have another way of learning that is more about our experience, our sensing, a deep knowing. This is an intelligence that is already completed in us. So this practice of mindfulness is already innate, right? This is already an innate human capacity. And it's a way of getting more in touch with our own humanity. So this is how we're going to strengthening the noticing brain, is through the practice of mindfulness itself. So you don't have to be an expert at this. You don't have to get really good at this. You just have to do your best, right? So first it starts with, and if you want to do this at home, it starts with getting in a comfortable seated posture. So I like to have my feet firmly planted on the floor. You're sitting with a sense of dignity, of support, right? You're sitting upright, but not too uptight. So you're not militaristic about it, because you're going to start feeling really tense. We don't want to add more attention to our practice. There's enough here already. And what to do with the hands. So maybe just kind of shake your hands along your sides, and then bend your elbows, and then gently rest them on your lap. So eyes open is okay. Eyes closed is okay for meditation practice. But most of you are looking at a screen. I would really recommend taking your gaze off the screen, maybe lowering your gaze to just a couple feet in front of you. Or if it feels good, invite yourself to allow your eyes to close. So this is very much a non-conceptual exercise here. We're getting in touch with our humanness, with our beingness. So I call this practice going from doing and thinking mode to being and feeling. So there's nothing for you to do here. There's nothing for you to manage. You don't have to improve anything about your performance. You don't have to prove anything either. And so this is just a space where you can let yourself rest. You can recognize that you come to a full and complete stop. And notice what that feels like. That can feel pretty uncomfortable. Many of us are used to running very quickly, multitasking. But just as many of us know, the body benefits from movement, and the mind actually benefits from stillness. So to deepen your sense of presencing, I'll invite you to let the attention rest on the flow of your own breath. So getting in touch here that the fact that you're breathing, most of the time we're not even aware. So notice if there's a temperature shift or change on your inhale, allowing yourself to much as we want the attention to rest on the breathing and intend for this to happen, the attention wanders. So maybe sounds arise or thoughts will come in, emotions arise, and this is not a problem, right? So there's no such thing as distractions. We make the distractions. It's only a distraction if we let it be. So thoughts can actually be part of the meditation practice in and of itself. So you can get more familiar here with what's on the mind. So instead of being lost inside thinking, being carried away by the thought train, you can become more familiar with what's on the mind. So if there's a worried thought, you can not give it any more energy, but allow it to just be there. You can say to yourself, oh, there's a worried thought, not treating it any differently than any other thought. Or a plan. Just making thinking. So just like clouds can and pay attention to how you're feeling right now. So this is maybe 3 to 5 minutes. Sometimes when I practice meditation, time just tends to get a little skewed for me. So notice how you're feeling. And I'm kind of curious, would Dr. Deming want to come back over here and curious to see what your experience was about?
Yeah, so I feel good. I feel it is amazing how just that short amount of time can have a positive effect. I've gone through this before. I don't have a good practice of meditation, but I'm kind of familiar with the concepts of this idea that a thought comes into our mind and we acknowledge it's a thought and we come back to just the present and especially it helped me when we started focusing on the breathing. Focusing on nothing seems like, okay, what am I focusing on?
Sure.
And then I'm thinking about the fact that I'm not focusing on anything, which is a thought. So for me, having that anchor or tag, but then I like the way that you say, no matter how good you are, part of the exercise is how you teach yourself to come back.
Right.
That we all have minds that are racing, and it's not like he whose mind doesn't race wins. It's the exercise is how do you recognize that your mind is wandering and you bring it back. And so it's kind of like golf. The worse you are, the more you get to practice
Right.
as you're playing a game of golf. You
Yep.
get more swings if you're bad.
Right.
And kind of meditation is that way too. The more you're amateur, the more you get to bring it back. Acknowledge you're just wandering and bring it back.
Right. And it's just like your analogy of building your muscle, right? Like the mind wanders, you guide it back. That's like one bicep curl in the gym.
That's a rep.
It's one rep, right?
Yeah,
you can't be done. You have to do lots of reps, don't you, to strengthen. So that's the hard part, but it's also the healing part, that noticing when you've become lost and carried away. And there's healing in the return. There's healing in the coming back home because you're awake again, right? There's a new opportunity, and you're interrupting those habits and patterns of the mind of always being lost inside of our thoughts, right? Being so carried away. So I'm going to share my screen again, and let's talk about the stress reactivity cycle. So this is part of the mindfulness-based stress reduction class. And make sure that I can do this correctly. Share screen. Are we good? Oh, okay, gotcha. Can X out of that. Yep. Okay, so you mentioned to everyone that I am from Dubuque. This was taken in Dubuque, Iowa. So, yes, a black bear was spending some time this summer in Dubuque. And this was taken from one of my good friends. He texted it to me. So this was at a bank, I believe, in Dubuque. And I thought, I need to bring this into my stress reactivity, because could you imagine how you would feel? You talked about how you would feel when you get activated. It's called, right? So your heart starts racing, your mouth gets dry. So if you could imagine coming out of your work and seeing this, like what happens in the body? So we all have that fight, flight, freeze response, right? It's a mechanism that's very protective. Thank goodness we have it, right? Because otherwise, where would we be? And we all have one default, right? We all tend to have a default that we fall back on without thinking about it. So let's imagine that you see this bear coming out of your work and you decide to run, right? So you decide to run, and the bear was like, I already had my lunch. I'm good. I don't need to follow you. And he kind of just wanders off, and you run back in, you close the door, and you take a couple slow, deep breaths. You talk to one of your coworkers and friends and say, oh my God, what just happened? Did you see the bear? Oh, you tell the story, you get the stress out of your body, you talk with someone, you connect. Maybe she gives you a hug because you're so rattled. And you're safe, right? You shut the door, you feel safe. So many of us think that if we deal with the situation, the stressful situation, in this case, the bear, if the bear goes away, many of us think that we're just done. The stress is gone. That's not true, actually. So we still have to work through the emotions in the body. The body is like our storehouse for emotions. And this is a separate step than getting rid of the stress itself. So the stressor, as the bear we've talked about. So it's easy to think that the bear leaving, going away, it creates the sense of relief and ease. But it actually, in actuality, it was the running that you did to get away from the bear, and the connection with someone else that triggered that physiological and psychological sense of somatic ease and safety. So let's think about that for a minute. We don't have to wait until all our stressors go away, because we're human, all of us will have stress, right? It's not going anywhere. That's why this class is called the stress reduction class. I would be really famous if it was called elimination class, right? So yeah, we don't have to wait. We can actually start to work on this as it's actually happening. So let's think about this in a different way. So I took this directly from John Kabat-Zinn's Full Catastrophe Living. This is directly from week 4 out of the 8-week class of how do we get stuck in stress reactivity. So the bear was a real threat, right? We have real threats in our lives, but most of the time we're not always being chased by bears, are we? We have other types of bears. So what are the bears in your life?
Yeah, so I think the two big ones are replaying incidents in our mind of somebody who did something to us that, we perceived as disrespectful, and worrying about the future of what might be. So it's regrets of the past and worrying about the future. Those are the two big bears.
Absolutely. So we have real threats, we have perceived threats that are all kind of happening in the mind. External threats, internal threats, and with this slide we have stress. So all the stress is funneling into external events and internal stressors, right? How are we perceiving this? It directly affects, I would like to ask you this question. Okay, so is there any systems of the body that stress does not affect?
Oh, I would bet no. Just knowing how we're a huge ecosystem, and you can't affect one part of the body without the other.
Right.
So I think that we're all affected, and another thing you allude to, this is a not a totally bad thing, that we have the mutations that allowed us to develop who we are. It was very protective. And so the reason that we all tend to be focused on assuming that something is bad rather than good is that if you saw a rock and you mistook it for a bear, you just had a little bit of stress, but you
Right.
didn't die. If you
Exactly.
saw a bear and mistook it for just a rock, you would die.
Mhm.
So the survival of the fittest actually caused us to evolve to be oversensitive to perceiving danger, because those who perceive danger more often survive to pass their genes on.
Sure.
And those who were like, oh, everything's mellow, got eaten
Sure.
and didn't pass on their genes.
Is that why I'm so anxious? Is because my ancestors were anxious?
Because your ancestors did not get eaten.
Didn't get
and
eaten
they
by the bear.
Yes, and they passed on those genes.
Right. So this is what happens when we get stuck in stress reactivity. We have the stressors. We mount the response, fight, flight, freeze. That's not a bad thing. That's a very good thing. But what happens is when we can't fight, we can't run. It's not appropriate to punch our boss in the face or run like screaming because we feel activated. So we have to sit and we internalize, right? It keeps going. So as you can see as this slide is that we have this reactivity, but then we start to internalize and it inhibits the stress reaction. So eventually we have breakdown, we have burnout, we have you're more liable for diseases such as, like you said, cancer, depression, anxiety, and then eventually we get to that physiological and psychological breakdown and telomere shortening. That is kind of an amazing thing. So telomeres are the little end caps on our chromosomes that tend to deteriorate when we're under chronic stress. And so just like the ends of our shoelaces, if they come off, they start to unravel. And that's kind of what have you ever noticed, like the president of the United States, when they're first in office and then 4 years later, what they look like 4 years later? It's looked like they had aged, like 10, 15 years, not just 4 years. That's kind of what we're talking about, is that chronic stress. That's just a lot of the wear and tear happens on the body when we can't get out of this cycle. So we're all very familiar with this, aren't we? This was very telling when I first took this class, and I'm like, oh, I see myself. There I am. Yep, I do that. What are the maladaptive coping mechanisms we get into? And how can we be more healthy on how to complete or disrupt this reactivity type of cycle? So see if we can. Oh, it didn't go. Well, these are the lists, but usually when I have it comes with the first one and the second one, but let's just kind of go down the line. So the first most important one is to move yourself. That's the most effective and efficient way of getting stress out of the body, is through physical exercise. And it doesn't have to be super rigorous. And the science says anywhere from 20 to 60 minutes. Even if you can't, like if you're stuck at your desk all day, even just tensing, and if you'd like to try this at home, just like tensing your muscles or just tensing your hands and your face and your arms, and just feeling the tension in your body, and then consciously releasing it, consciously letting it go, letting yourself kind of just sink back in. And you can try that a few times, like 50% effort and then 0% effort, 25% effort, and releasing. So tensing and releasing, it's a really good way to kind of let that stress and acknowledge it, because a lot of times we carry it and we don't even notice it. It's there. So physical exercise, the best way. Even just a walk, right? Conscious breathing is another way. And actually, I need to say, I'm adapting this from the book I've discovered. It's called Burnout. It's the secret to unlocking the stress cycle. And it's absolutely fascinating. And I teach the stress cycle. That's what I thought was so cool about this. It's like, we can really be more intentional about what am I doing and why am I doing it? If I'm not just going for a walk, but I'm literally reducing my stress and letting it go, it's so much more effective when you're really conscious and aware of it. So conscious breathing, and that's not breathing from the chest. That's not big breathing. We're not breathing chest. We're breathing low and slow with a diaphragm. So think about slowing down your inhale and having an even slower exhale. Can you tell me about the vagus nerve?
Yes, now you're going to test me.
I just
So
love
it's-
sitting with a doctor.
yeah,
now it's like,
part
give
of
me
the
some more information.
autonomic nervous system.
Yep.
So it's the way in which our mind kind of connects physiologically with the nerve connection to our heart and our gut. And it's the kind of the hard wire by which our thoughts and feelings, what happens in the mind has then a direct physiologic effect on our organs.
Absolutely. Vagus, VAGUS. It's not like Las Vegas. Right? This is a Latin word meaning to wander, and so this nerve wanders all over and connects to all these different systems in the body. And so when you extend your exhale, you make your exhale longer than your inhale. You have a better vagal tone that it's a more of a somatic sense of safety when you elongate the exhale. So slow conscious breathing is really good for disrupting this reactivity cycle. Positive social interaction. This is fascinating to me because I didn't really think about that is part of how we feel connected, right? Remember, it's the running and the connection that helps us feel safe after that stressful event. So it's not only your strong bonds like your spouse or your partner, or your children, your good friends, it's your weak bonds too that are really important. So what we're doing right now, right? Or someone that checks your groceries, connecting with that person, making eye contact, it's huge. It's telling yourself that you're connected and you belong.
It is huge. In any profession that's a human being interacting with another human being. So, for example, a doctor and a patient are two human beings. And the relationship, taking time to form the caring relationship, is therapeutic. And the number of times that you sit down in a caring way and express concern and listen, the number of times that a patient will say, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
And what that is just as you're speaking, it is that social bond that in and of itself, regardless of exactly what you say, has a therapeutic benefit.
Absolutely. It's all connected. Yeah. So the next one that I love is laughter, right? So do you have a group of people that you've like really belly laughed with, where your face hurts and your stomach hurts after a while? And then how good do you feel after that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Another way we can connect. And then last but not least, this is one I've been really working on, is affection. And they talk about in this book the 20-second hug. And I think it's fascinating, where when you hug normally when you hug someone, it's like, oh, hi. And you just kind of pat and you're done. It's literally, I talk about making it awkward. You make it a little awkward. You're just going to hug and you're going to just kind of you hug until you feel relaxed. I've been doing this with my daughter. She's 10. She's more interested than my son. My son's 13. He's like, no, thanks, Mom. I'm good. I don't love touching Mom. But what actually happens is when you do kind of go into that hug and really meet that other person in a different way, your blood pressure goes down, your heart rate goes down, your the love hormone called oxytocin rises, right? So there's all sorts of things that your mood improves. This has all been studied, and I would love to see a study where you're studying people that are hugging and what happens to people, right? So again, it's this connection and belonging.
And I'm a little concerned about, this new world.
Yeah,
of
right?
COVID, where hugging is discouraged, if not forbidden.
Yeah. Yep.
So we'll have to see if we're seeing more stress because of worry and because of real threat of illness, but also the loss of the social interaction that we've had from the mild smiling and being present in the same room without a face mask to the loss of the ability to hug strangers.
Right. Absolutely.
Or not strangers, but casual acquaintances.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. We're social beings. Yeah. I am a little worried about what will happen long term for that. So I'm kind of wondering, like, what are you already doing? What are you already doing in this that you haven't really been as conscious about? Like, what works for you with disrupting the cycle?
Yeah. So I would answer that in two ways. One, I would answer about my own personal life. And then second, I would answer, how do I use my knowledge of meditation and mindfulness based stress reduction, kind of this generic form, not the form where you've gone through the training you've gone through, but how do I use that? Well, I would say in my professional interaction, just a phone conversation I had right before I came here was a lovely woman who has whose husband has died after 50 years of marriage, and there was a long illness, and she is still playing over the thoughts of woulda, coulda, shoulda, how could we have done this different, and the conversation about, there's a time for that, but that constantly replaying that, you need to do that to some extent, but that's not likely ever going to provide you a sense of comfort and relief.
Yeah.
And to the extent that you can remember good memories and focus on the here and now and learn how even you continue to love that person even after they've died,
Sure.
and to focus on the sense of here and now and love, as opposed to that perseveration that happens when we get into the mind loop of just playing and overplaying and replaying the past, which you can't change.
Right.
So that would be just an example of understanding how that not only doesn't bring solace, but actually can lead to more stress.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I will tell my patients, it's impossible to tell you never to do that, but you could give yourself 10 minutes every day from 10 a.m. to 10:10 to just go at it and perseverate and deal with it all you want. And then when it becomes to be 2 o'clock and this pops into your mind that you want to think about that, no, I've got an appointment tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock to think about that.
Yeah.
And so realizing you can't eliminate it, how can you compartmentalize it?
Right.
So that's another way I use it. And personally, physical activity. I've long known that engaging in vigorous physical activity, sweating, being outdoors in nature, those provide me a sense of peace and calm.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm kind of back into, so it's okay if I share my screen again?
Yes.
Okay. So just to give some more resources, if anyone's interested, I offer my next 4-week class is coming up live online in November. I have an 8-week, the MBSR program, the evidence-based program is going to start in January. That'll also be live online. And then I also offer ongoing one-on-one mindfulness and breath work. I have a new office coming the middle of October, so I'll have an office sharing it with a mental health professional. She's mindfulness-based in the East Village in Des Moines, and then also online. So I also offer, if you register early, you can save $25. And for the workshop special, if anyone's interested, there's a coupon code for 10% off MBSR as well.
Excellent.
So see if I can do this. So just go back here.
There we go.
All right.
Well, are we done with the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Well, let's just talk a little. Let's first of all recognize we've got a live studio audience. Any questions from the audience for Allison?
Sleep. How do you? I wake up at a certain time and can't fall back asleep.
Yes.
How can I use meditation to get back to sleep?
So the question has to do with sleep. We go to sleep, we wake up in the middle of the night. What are some techniques of mindfulness or meditation that might help us?
Great question. And many of us have this problem, and it's tricky, especially in the middle of the night when we wake up in the middle of the night. I've noticed the more that I get into my head about, if I can just get 2 more hours, the more elusive sleep becomes, right? So the more that you can get out of your head using meditation, the more that you can stay in the present moment by using the body. Some people use what's called the body scan as a practice of what John Kabat-Zinn calls falling awake, right? So what's your intention? If we use the body scan to fall awake, to stay more present with ourselves, we can also use the body scan as an intention to fall asleep too. So the body scan is a really great meditation to get out of the head, to get back into the body. Also breathing. Breathing is
And maybe elaborate on the body scan for
Yes.
people who
Yep.
don't know that.
Thank you. Thank
term.
you. Yep. So the body scan is rotating your consciousness or awareness through different portions of the body. So instead of being lost in thinking, you're literally feeling the palms of your hands, right? Rotating your consciousness all the way through the different parts of the body and then coming back out to the body as a whole. There's no wrong or right way to do it.
So
really.
one way you might be laying there and you just consciously, okay, feel the top of my head. I feel the back of my head on the pillow. I feel my right ear. I feel my left ear. I feel my chin. I feel my chest, my shoulder. So you actually go through and sense what are you feeling in each of those body parts. And you can go, down the hand to this finger and this finger and this finger. And the idea is that you're having your mind focus on each of those things, as opposed to having your mind thinking about who disrespected you during the day and are you going to have enough money to pay the rent tomorrow. You make your mind focus on something in the present.
Yeah. And when the mind focuses on the present, the body starts to relax naturally. And then you eventually just fall back asleep. We can't make ourselves fall asleep. It's really literally a letting go, right? So that takes some practice too. And also the conscious breathing. So inhaling for 3 to 4 seconds, exhaling for 5 to 6 seconds, making that exhale a lot longer. Again, that engages your vagus nerve. It engages your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest phase, the tend and befriend. That body knows, oh, okay, I'm back into safety. I can relax. I can let go. And really using even the tensing, relaxing, tensing, relaxing. So those are my go-tos anyway. Yeah.
So when you breathe, then would you use the deep abdominal breathing throughout the entire way, or?
So the question is, if you're using one of those breathing techniques at night to help you get back to sleep, is there one breathing technique versus another that is better?
The best is elongating the exhale and not to overinflate. We don't want to take big breaths. So big breath does not equal a deep breath. Big breath is like upper chest, and that's going to stimulate your sympathetic nervous system, right? It's going to help you kind of rev up. That's a good thing if you're feeling foggy and want to wake up. Yeah, take the big breaths, right? That's gonna really allow you to feel more wakeful. The other one is slow, low belly. Feel it low as you can and relax those muscles of the belly so that you can really feel it low in the belly. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Good question.
Any other?
We talked about nighttime, and it's interesting that you said that. Dr. Deming starts from the top to his feet. I usually start from my feet and go to the top. So during the daytime, there's folks like myself who are, I guess, stressed throughout the whole day because I got a thinking job.
Yeah.
I think all day long, from 6 a.m. to 5:30, 6 o'clock p.m. Then by the end of the day, I'm just totally exhausted.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm physically exhausted, it's because I'm mentally exhausted. Right. So through mindfulness, can I get that back in a short period of time so I can go through my next sequence, which would be the evening time, which I might be working out or watching TV or things like that.
Yeah. So what do you mean by getting it back?
Okay, so I'm stressed out. I'm totally exhausted, right? And I want to regenerate my body up to a point through mindfulness to get me back to the present. Yeah.
So do you have a job where you're sedentary?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
What are your thoughts about movement, mindful movement?
I kind of do that during the day, but maybe not as much as I should. One of the things that I do is I do take a healthy break during the day, which I actually go to the gym and I work out the
Yeah.
biceps. In fact, I did arms today, right? So that really hit me.
Yeah.
We did the bicep thing.
Yeah.
So that was a good break. And always after that, I feel like I'm ready for the next round, if you will.
Sure.
It kind of, if I can put it in a bigger context, so you're sort of asking, can you use mindfulness to make you more alert? And we usually think of, okay, I want mindfulness to mellow me, but is there a way of using mindfulness instead of caffeine to make your mind more alert?
To bring you back to the present, make you more alert to the present.
Mm-hmm. So can mindfulness be used to bring us to a more alert state if we're kind of got that afternoon fog and we really don't want to or don't have the opportunity to just lay down and take a nap?
Right. Yeah, many of my students, some people feel a lot more relaxed and sleepy when after a longer practice, but I do have other people that say I feel more alert, more focused, more at ease. It's I feel like it's better than a nap. So what I'm hearing from you is that maybe a bit of mindful movement would benefit to engage more in your sympathetic nervous system. So if you're kind of feeling more groggy, maybe a vigorous walk. We don't always have to be so slow, and it's not always about being so calm and relaxed. Is going for a walk, but bringing attention to the bottoms of your feet, knowing where your attention is. Maybe instead of letting your mind wander into thought or even just into your environment, really bringing it down to the body and focus on breath, focus on feet, focus on your body moving. Getting your body moving really engages more of that wakefulness. And I think that would really help you kind of go more into, like you said, you want to get into the rest of your evening to feel more energized and kind of transition yourself, right? Transition yourself from the workday into the rest of your evening so you can be more present with yourself, with others as well. Does that helpful?
Exactly. You hit it
Yeah.
right on.
Yeah, your answer made me think of a few things. One is, there are traditions of movement meditation, walking meditation, for example. So I have to admit, my biggest fear of meditation is that I just it's almost like a claustrophobia. Like I can't sit here
Yeah.
in this room any longer. I just gotta move.
Yeah.
So that's whereas if you say, let's go walk outside for 5 miles and practice being present and mindful, that would be easier for me.
Yep.
And the other thing I would say is I have to sometimes when I'm doing open water swimming, again, it's not a fear of drowning, but sometimes it's a sense of claustrophobia that can't get my breathing regulated. And there it's all about mindfully counting my breaths as I get into this mindfulness of being here, because the idea that you have to get up and leave is just your mind racing, saying you can't. You're perfectly fine, but our mind is pretty powerful.
It's very powerful. It's like a supercomputer, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe let's talk a bit about the role of stress reduction in health. And we've touched upon it. And as we already said, mindfulness-based stress reduction. And we say those words in that order because that is really a trademarked program that was started and actually copyrighted, if you will, and is an 8-week program. And it's the program that has been used in randomized prospective clinical trials that have shown this huge amount of benefit. We know that maybe other things work, but that mindfulness-based stress reduction is really kind of the gold standard of what the evidence shows. But the ways in which it can provide health benefits are tremendous when you look at all of the literature out there. And you touched upon it a bit. Maybe share again some specific outcomes that we see for individuals who have gone through the mindfulness-based stress reduction program.
Sure. Yeah. Many of my students say that they get to sleep more easily. They stay asleep more through the night. Other people say that they their blood pressure is lower. They go to their doctor and they say, I don't know if it's the class. I don't know if it's, what it is, but they're in the middle of my class. And I've had at least a handful of people say that their blood pressure is lower. People become better communicators. They're better listeners. I'm just starting a new class, and the people that are starting, they say, I want to be more present, but I don't know how. People are talking to me, but my mind is just all over the place. I don't know how to be more present. And that's what everyone wants, is connection, right? And so that's another one, is that people are better listeners. They can communicate better. What else?
So some others that I'm aware of is measurement of compassion, as
Greater empathy.
and also there's immunologic studies showing a boost to the immune system. So, and those are not subjective studies; those are very objective studies looking at various manifestations of immunologic function. And then, as you mentioned, the telomere, and you also mentioned the neuroplasticity. And so then when you get to extrapolating like the benefits of a boosted immune system, you can see over time a reduction in the likelihood of developing another cancer. You can see an effect on memory, perhaps decreased dementia. You can see the effect on the heart and other physiologic functions. So when you start really doing a long-term analysis of the health benefits, because it affects the whole body, there are many, many health benefits. Are you aware of any detriments, of any harmful health consequences of mindfulness-based stress reduction?
Yeah, so the only risk that I say, and it's pretty low, the risk that I mostly talk about is thoughts, emotions can tend to get a little bit bigger, right? So it can be a little stressful to take a stress reduction class like this, because you're starting to see your life, the way you perceive events, a little bit more clearly, more consciously. And so sometimes those thoughts and emotions can get a little bit overwhelming.
It's like, oh my God, what have I done with my life? And is it too late to start over?
Right. But they're not unworkable, right? They're not unworkable. And in a group environment, in a very supportive, protected type of environment, it's something that can be worked through. It's called trauma-sensitive mindfulness as well. So sometimes we can, it can be just a little bit too much for people. So that being said, there's always resources out there, whether it's mindfulness combined with therapy for therapeutic processes. So that's the only one that really kind of jumps out, is that's the big risk, is that sometimes it can just be a little bit overwhelming. But again, it's always something that's workable as long as we can find support.
And I like the way that you also pointed out that little bits of this at a time can also be helpful. Obviously, it's a big commitment to commit 8 weeks of for the full program, but you can ease yourself into it, as you did tonight with us for just a few minutes. You also can find times that are stressful. So let's say you're on the freeway and the traffic is jammed up, or you're at a stoplight that's too long. Instead of just being upset about something you can't change, you can take those 3 minutes to calm yourself down, count your breaths, hopefully not miss the light when it turns green. But use those moments, instead of sitting there stewing and perseverating over the bad traffic, to use it as a time for some mindfulness.
Right. Absolutely.
Little bits of mindfulness throughout the day.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. Mindfulness, you don't have to be sitting on a cushion. You don't have to be like navel gazing the whole time. Mindfulness can be done on airplanes, can be done in the car. I practice when I wait in line at the grocery store. When I'm like, come on, let's go, right? My body wants to just like, let's get on with it. It's like, you know what? I'm sitting here anyway. I might as well practice a little bit of presence here. So yeah, I can respond a little bit more wisely rather than react.
Right. It's kind of like when I have to leave the clinic to go over to the hospital to see a patient in the middle of the day. It's like, this is just exercise on company time. Just take it in stride.
Exactly.
You know, you're in line. This is getting to find a bit of mindfulness on company time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, Allison, I really appreciate it. And let me just commit to you that we're going to find a way in which we can offer your class in our new center as we get it
Well,
open.
wonderful. I would
Figure
love
out
that.
a way to collaborate. I know
Absolutely.
that you've worked with cancer survivors and other caregivers involved with cancer care. And this isn't just for cancer survivors and caregivers, but you know, in our world, having the ability to learn how to be mindful and be present can provide us not only a sense of peace and calm, but more and more evidence that it may help improve our outcomes overall.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Well,
thank you so much, Allison, for being with us. And I want to thank the audience, both our studio audience and our online audience. This again was I'm Dick Deming. I'm medical director of Mercy One Cancer Center and founder of Above and Beyond Cancer. And this was brought to you by a collaboration with Above and Beyond Cancer and Mercy One Cancer Center with a grant from the Iowa Cancer Consortium. And those of you who want to watch this again, you will be able to find a recording of this video podcast on the Mercy One Cancer Center website or the Above and Beyond Cancer YouTube channel. And those will be available later this week on those two different venues. So thanks again, Allison, for joining us. And please come and join us again next week. Thanks, everybody.